Very grateful. Well, it says, Sahanistan Mahachidram. There's no greater mistake we could ever do in this creation. Samoha, Sa Javipramaha. There's no greater delusion, no greater confusion. And what? Tan Muhurtam Kshanamapi. Then one little moment, Vasudevam Nachinte, forgetting him. So there's no better way of entering such a remembrance than through the prayers of great devotees, or to speak through the prayers of the creator of this universe. And the Adi Guru of our whole Sampradaya. And there's no better way to enter this prayer of Brahma than with a very dear Vaishnava that is dear to our heart, like Maharaj, Padmanabha Maharaj. So it's wonderful. And sometimes we think, oh, it's a little too much. But we have to understand, if we would go in that speed which would suit the subtle constellation, the constellation of the subtle body, we would stay in this world. So in the very beginning of Vila Kusumanjali, Raghunath Goswami says, Vaidāga Bhakti Rasam Prayana Apayana Mammana Vipsamana Pambodhyastamaham Sanatanantam. Yeah. Oh my dear, Sanatana Goswami, he forced me to drink. And sometimes we need, this is one aspect of intense sadhu sangha. We go a little further than our normal borders are. Raghunath Goswami says, I'm so thankful that Sanatana Goswami, he forced me. I was not even thinking to drink that wonderful nectar. Suddenly, he put it. So sometimes I felt, we are in such a situation like in the beginning of Ilapkasamanjali for hours and hours, and somehow a divine arrangement is putting us a little further than which we would normally drink. And this is called, like the camels. They sometimes go through an oasis and they drink a lot, because they know we will go again through the desert. So we drink now a little more than we would normally do. So Maharaj, you're very forceful that you're in the line of Sanatana Goswami that comes to Srila Tripurari Maharaj, and the extended form of Tripurari Maharaj suddenly appears now in Anandadam. Sometimes we carry the same loads of the parampara. Narad Muni is saying that from Daksha, traveling around is one,
I can relate with that. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namashishtam Manumapi Satchiputram Atrasharupam Rupam Tasya Grajamurupurim Madhurim Gastavatim Radha Kundam Giribaram Maho Radhikamadhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratitha Gripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatusme Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nikhila Shruti Mali Ratnamala Dyuti Nirajita Padapankajanta Aji Mukta Kulairupasyamanam Paritastam Harinam Samshrayami Anaripita Charim Chirat Karunayavatirna Kalo Shamarpaitam Unnatoch Balarasam Savakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaye Kandharesh Purato Vasatrinandana Janulambita Bujo Kanakavadato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Takshu Vishwambaro Dwijabaro Jugadharma Palo Ande Jagat Priyakara Karunavataru Ladini Shakti Swarupaya Gauranga Suhridaya Cha Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namostute He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Radhe Vrindavanadi Se Karunamrita Vahine Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyan Mayam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshay Chittas Shakamaditarangamadhe Kripa Mahitvam Sharanam Prapanam Vinde Maste Charanarabindam Vrinde Maste Charanarabindam Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nityananda ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Gadadhar ji ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Brahma-stuti ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Primanam Hari Hari Om. So, Pranam to all, good morning. Thanks so much for again being present here. As Sriman Krishna Chandra Prabhu mentioned, and I was speaking also yesterday with some of the devotees, they were asking me, Maharaj, it's possible that the classes are getting longer every day? I said, oh, I didn't notice that. So I felt Krishna Chandra Prabhu had a glimpse that classes may get even longer every day. So he's given some foundation philosophy for us to know how to cope with that. he's always very generous to present everything in Siddhantic terms, even to take a picture like we did yesterday. The group photographs have some underlying philosophy. What to speak the length of Harikatha getting more and more expanded. But that's our life. That's our ideal. No? The Harikatha gets so expanded that there's nothing else apart from that in between. No? Everything becomes like a thick, continuous, condensed current of that only principle. So that's the only thing that happens in Braj. No? Harikatha, Harikatha, Harikatha. Even when they speak Gramya Katha in Vrindavan, Gramya Katha means like village talk. Like when people in the village get together in the corner and start to speak in the evening. Have you heard, that this come and this come? But all the Gramya Katha in Braj is about Krishna. The last news about Krishna. So even Gramya Katha is Hari Katha there. There's no Gramya Katha. Yeah, Gram means like village. So Gramya Katha, they go to Nandagram to speak Gramya Katha. But that Gramya Katha is, that gossip is the highest form of Harikatha. So we are aspiring to enter that realm with even the gossip is the highest praise and absorption. So we have to begin somewhere. So here we are like doing a rehearsal of that. And instead of being 24/7, we are trying 3 hours, one class, 3 hours, 6 hours per day. And hopefully in between we continue. Of course, that's the idea. No? That's the idea. Once I remember my Guru Maharaj was giving a lecture and and everyone was like really attentive to the lecture. And after the lecture, one devotee went to my Guru Maharaj surprise and tell, do you know what, Guru Maharaj? After the lecture, people were speaking about the lecture. No? Like he was accustomed that sometimes after a lecture, okay, now let's take a rest from Harikatha and let's speak something else. No? now I can speak what I really want. But in this case, the experience was the lecture was over, but the lecture was not over. As Krishna Chandra Prabhu gave you this homework the other day. No? Write your own prayer, write your own commentary, continue in the lecture. Extend the Bhagavat. The Bhagavat has that potential. Nityam Bhagavata Sivaya. The Bhagavatam can be served Nityam, perpetually. Aitukiya Pratihata. No need for interruption. So I feel very blessed to be. He says that I'm reinforcing lovingly all of you to drink this, but he's forcing me to force you. So that's how it works, basically. Hopefully then you will force us to continue. As at the end, when I say it's over, are you okay? No. Continue, Maharaj. So I'm forced by the will of the Vaishnavas. No more free will. I have free will, but you have free will as well.
But this is all Krishna is doing.
Okay, let's put the responsibility on him. Anyhow, so we are so blessed to be able to continue today, and we are so fortunate, and very interestingly today's topic in today's verse will be exactly how fortunate. Aho bhagyam. So everything is connected. But before going to today's verse, let's make a brief summary of yesterday's verse, which also included aho, which also included some form of bhagya, but now it will get multiplied. So yesterday we were seeing verse 31, in which Krishna showed his greediness for his greed for the Brajavasis milk, or the Brajavasis affection. So I'll read the verse quickly in English and then some words, and then we go to today's verse. So Brahma began last verse saying, wow, oh, how extremely fortunate are the cows and ladies of Braj. You, Krishna, taking the form of their calves and children, have intensely drunk with delight their nectar-like breast milk. O pervader, all the Vedic sacrifices performed from time immemorial up to the present day have not given you as much satisfaction. So here we have Brahma praising the Vatsalya Brajavasis, if you will. Speaking about Vrindavan overtly, clearly, for the first time in one sense in this series, in this section, I'm pointing to those who have Vatsalya Bhav for Krishna, the cows and the mothers. And as we know, Krishna expanded for a year in the form of the boys and the calves to allow them to taste having Krishna as their child. We already explained that yesterday. So Brahma speaks this verse according to some of our acharyas, if Krishna will suggest to him, Brahma, you are such a high personality, and me and all of us here are just village people, cowherds. So better you aspire to be born among the Yadu dynasty, a more sophisticated, refined, cultured, aristocratic metropolis. So Brahma replies with this verse, pointing to the fortune of the Brajavasis above all other forms of fortune. So Brahma here is praying. He's saying, I'm known as Aja, unborn, but I like to be born in Vrindavan. I like to have a Brajavasi mother and father. I don't care for anything else. For Dwarka, for metropolis, for my birth as Brahma, position, fame. It's not easy to be detached from all those things. And Brahma calls Krishna here Bibhu, this name Bibhu, which means pervader, indicating he's always everywhere, he's complete, Purna, Paripurna. So this Bibhu, this complete being, is greedy for being nourished by the milk of the Brajavasis. Oh, by the Brajavasis affection. Remember, milk represents affection. And he's so greedy for that it's not enough for him to drink with one mouth from one udder or one breast, but he had to expand himself with unlimited calves, unlimited boys. Unlimited, you cannot count them. It's not just any fixed number. Unlimited. To satisfy his thirst, to quench his thirst and hunger for the affection of the Brajavasis. For a whole year, not just for 1 minute. Whole year, millions of expansions, millions of tongues. And here it says, Ativa and Muddha. He did that excessively and with great delight to further qualify his greed. And Brahma is now realizing, me as a deva and so many others have been offering yajna to you, swaha, saha, for anadi time without beginning. But we can see that you are not as satisfied with that as in connection to the affection of the Brajavasis. It's qualitatively something, another category altogether. As we say, these yajnas are more fruitively oriented, while the Brajavasis' love is totally selfless. So we concluded yesterday's explanation with some words in connection to this concept of Krishna being beyond Atmaram. Remember? Krishna being, on one sense, self-satisfied, God, but in Vrindavan, we find another version of that, beyond the Upanishads. God beyond the Upanishads. Something like that. Upanishads say he's self-satisfied, he's the absolute, he's this, he's that. Vrindavan, it seems he becomes greedy. He becomes greedy for prem, for affection. We spoke about Krishna's Swarup Shakti Ananda. How his greatest bliss is when he interacts in love with his devotees, with his own Swarup Shakti personified. We gave the example of the flute, remember? The air and passing through the flute. So Krishna has Swarup Shakti inside, if you will, but when that Swarup Shakti takes a shape as a Brajavasi, that sounds much nicer. And we also explained how Krishna is so much attracted to that he's willing to abandon all his other qualities. He has so many. He's willing to be detached from all of them, except for one called Bhakta Vatsalya, which means I am affectionate to my devotees. If you take that out, you no longer have Krishna. If you deprive Krishna of Bhakta Vatsalya, he becomes something else, something less, not Krishna. You follow? He becomes Brahman or something like that, indeterminate absolute, but not Krishna.
One of the four Madhuris of Krishna.
Exactly. So this is one of the defining qualities of Swayam Bhagavan Krishna. So he can abandon everything except for his devotees. So in this verse that we saw yesterday, we have again one aho, one expression of astonishment. When Brahma is contemplating the Atibhagya or the extreme good fortune of the Brajavasis. But in today's verse, which arguably may be considered the most important verse of the whole Brahma-stuti, Brahma will multiply his astonishment. He will say aho twice. And in the context of this verse, Brahma will express his ultimate longing aspiration. In the context of Sakya Bhav. So that will be today's verse. Fasten your seatbelts. I hope you brought like 5 seatbelts at least each one. There's a lot to share today, so probably today's class will be longer than all of them. So have enough water, enough seatbelts, enough everything.
And nothing else to do.
And we will have enough Harikatha, so no problem for that. So I'll read the verse first. This is in Anushtuv Chanda, no, the meter called Anushtuv, which is one of the simplest and most typical ones. In this case, Brahma is not failing with the meter, but he ecstatically will repeat 2 times the same idea. So that's another way of expressing ecstasy. It says like this: Aho bhagyam, Nanda Gopa Brajo Kasham, Yanmitram Paramanandam, Purnam Brahma Sanatanam. Can repeat all together? Aho bhagyam, Nanda Gopa Brajo Kasham, Yanmitram Paramanandam, Purna Brahma Sanatanam. So this is the verse. Basically, the translation says like this. Brahma is saying, how fortunate are the people of Nanda Gopa's community of Braj. He who is the complete Brahman and the direct embodiment of supreme bliss has become their eternal friend. This is today's verse, which Brahma is expressing extreme astonishment. Aho bhagyam, oh how great good fortune. In connection to the people who live in Nanda Maharaj's cowherd village. And of course, the great fortune, which is that person who is supreme, the most complete form of the absolute, the personification of bliss, such a person has become their friend. They are relating to him on equal terms. So let's go to the word by word of the verse, and then we will try to say something about it. So I'll repeat one word, and you go and so on. Aho!
Aho!
No. Again.
Aho!
Okay. And that's only the first one. Which means, oh, wow, or how astonishing. Bhagyam. The good fortune. Aho!
Aho!
How astonishing.
How astonishing.
Bhagyam,
Bhagyam.
the good fortune.
The good fortune.
Nanda Gopa,
Nanda Gopa.
of the cowherd named Nanda.
Of the cowherd named Nanda.
Brajaukasham,
Brajaukasham.
of the inhabitants of Brajabhumi.
Of the inhabitants of Brajabhumi.
Yanmitram,
Yanmitram.
the friend of whom?
The friend of whom?
Parama Anandam,
Paramanandam.
the supreme bliss.
The supreme bliss.
Purnam,
Purnam.
complete. Brahma,
Brahma.
Brahman. Sanatanam,
Sanatanam.
eternal.
Eternal.
Did you pronounce the Brahma differently, Brahma, you said?
The H is a little bit like
Yeah,
Brahman.
that's why I
Brahman.
asked.
Yeah,
It's
so,
not Brahman, it's Brahman.
yeah. Yeah, I don't want to torture with the technicalities of
No, but
Sanskrit.
I-
I'm already torturing with
Yeah, but
long
it's-
classes.
I heard the
But it's-
difference, so I asked.
Yeah. So let's begin with, as usual, with the commentary that my Guru Maharaj has written on this verse called Bhaktivedanta Bhavanuvat. Then we will go to the other commentaries from different acharyas. So, and all of them have a lot to say today, given how important this verse is. After expressing his astonishment at the good fortune of the mothers of Raj, previous verse, Brahma then emphasizes with even greater astonishment and in intense bliss the good fortune of those friends of Krishna. Word Mitra means friend. Those friends of Krishna steeped in Sakya Prem, situated, referring to Sridham and the other young boys. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions in commentary, these boys are Sridham and others. So he's pointing to the Sakya camp. The word Mitra refers to the friends. While glorifying Braj, the cowherd kingdom of Nanda, as the domain of friendship, Brahma clearly exposes his own nishta, like his own determination, his own focus. And what's that? Eternal friendship, eternal Sanatanam, friendship Mitram, is the highest bliss, Paramanandam. We'll see how the words will have different meanings and applications according to the order. So one meaning of Sanatanam, Mitram, and Paramanandam is eternal Sanatanam, Mitram friendships represents Paramananda, the highest bliss. That's Brahma's subjective affinity. Simultaneously, he also states that Krishna, as the complete expression of Brahman, Purna Brahma, which means complete Brahman, not just Brahman, but complete one. He is himself the highest bliss personified as one's eternal friend. So friendship for Brahma is the highest bliss, or Krishna is the highest bliss personified as a friend. That's Brahma's realization. Having praised the residents of Raj in general, on the cowherd boys in particular, Brahma expresses his longing in Sambandhanuga Bhakti to reside in Braja himself by means of taking shelter of the dust of the Gopa's lotus feet. Then my Guru Maharaj makes one clarification, interesting one. He says, as it will be seen in his next prayers, in 2 more verses, Brahma does not pray directly to Krishna to bless him to become a cowherd, but rather he will pray to attain the dust from the feet of the residents of Braj. This we will see in verse 34. He says, Yad Gokul Pi Katamangri Rajabhishekam. May I have Abhishek, be bathed by the Raj, by the dust of the feet of these personalities in Gokul. So it's a way of asking for their mercy, their grace. Give me the dust of your feet. It's not just about taking the dust in itself. Once one devotee was trying to touch the feet of Srila Siddhar Maharaj, and he asked, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm trying to get the dust from your lotus feet." He kind of smiled and said, "Oh, you think that means that's what the meaning is of taking the dust of the lotus feet?" That is not like that. It's not just literally, I have the dust, okay, that's everything. I mean, I'm not saying that may be wrong, but the point is it goes beyond a physical act. So when the point here is when Brahma is praying in 2 more verses for the grace of the dust of the feet of the Brajavasis, and that of the cowherd boys in particular, the verse said Iha Atavyan, which is who were right there. So in other words, although in that verse Brahma won't say the cowherd boys, he will say, I want the feet of the dust of them, the Brajavasis, who were right there. Which means who were with Krishna in the midst of this Brahma Vimohan Lila. who were there who were there in that very forest in the midst of Krishna's cowherding. All of which serves as a portal to eternal friendship. Krishna, friends, cows, that's a portal for Sakya. Brahma prays in this way, knowing that the good fortune, or Bhuri Bhagyam, as it will be said in that verse. So he prays, so knowing that the good fortune of Raga Bhakti is only attained by the grace of such devotees. As such, Brahma shows his skill in sadhana, as he longs for Sakya Rasa himself. In other words, Raganuga sadhana means you follow the footsteps of the Ragatmikas, the eternal associates of Krishna in Braj, who are made of Prem, who personify a particular type of emotion that we want to attain. So for us to attain that situation, we need the mercy, the grace of those specific personalities. So Brahma is showing his advancement in Raga sadhana by praying in this particular way. So here in this verse again, we have this double aho. No? In the previous verse we had one aho, now aho is multiplying. Since Brahma is pointing to his ultimate desire, to serve Purna Brahman, the Supreme Absolute, as my Guru Maharaj said, in Sambandha Nuga Bhakti. Yeah, that's a term used by Rupa Goswami, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He uses these two terms, Sambandha Nuga Bhakti and Kama Nuga Bhakti. 2 divisions of Raga Nuga Bhakti. See, may I torture with a little bit of concepts and divisions? Okay. You're masochists. You want torture. He say, we need it. So I would say Raga Nuga Bhakti means to follow the Ragatmikas. So the Ragatmikas perform Ragatmika Bhakti. And Ragatmika Bhakti is divided in two. Sambandha Rupa Bhakti, Rupa, and Kama Rupa Bhakti. So Kama Rupa Bhakti refers in brief words to Madhurya Rasa. I'll mention that in general. And Sambandha Rupa Bhakti refers to all the other relationships that one can have with Krishna in Braj. Mostly Dasya, Sakya, and Vatsalya. These three fall under the category. These three fall under the category of Sambandha Rupa Bhakti. Rupa Bhakti. Sambandha means relationship. So we could say why Kama Rupa Bhakti is not inside Sambandha Rupa Bhakti. It's a relationship also. Why it's made separate category? We could say in Sambandha Rupa Bhakti you have servanthood. So for example, Raktak, Patrak, they are serving Krishna in Vrindavan. They love their master, if you will. It's a Dasya mixed with Sakya. And they love him, and Krishna loves them, and everyone knows that, and everything is okay. Then you have Sakya, in which Krishna's friends love Krishna as an equal, and Krishna loves them. Uniqueness in Sakya is in the same way that the friends feel for Krishna, Krishna feels for his friends exactly the same way, because it's on equal terms, Sakya. So one friend loves the other friend, and it's okay. That should be happening. Then we have Vatsalya. Yashoda loves Krishna, Nanda loves Krishna, and Krishna loves them. The son should love his parents, right? So that's okay, it's legal. So all that falls in the category of Sambandha, relationship. But Radha shouldn't love Krishna. She should love her husband. That's not legal. So that cannot be officially termed as a relationship because it's underground. It's something impelled by desire, kama. Of course, divine desire. No? Krishna Kami. So that's why we can say these separate categories there. Sorry?
You said that the friends, they love Krishna. One friend loves Krishna, and Krishna loves that friend the same way then that friend loves Krishna. It's an equal. So what about with Yashoda?
It's a different. It's a hierarchy there.
Yeah.
No, a mother and a child is different. I mean, of course they love each other, but the experience of love is totally different. Try to think about you and how the child feels for their parents and how the parent feels for the child. It's really different. I mean, I'm not saying it's inferior, it's just different.
Yeah.
But in friendship is equal. It's the same experience basically. So anyhow, so this Sambandha Rupa Bhakti and Kama Rupa Bhakti are the two divisions of Ragatmika Bhakti. So those who follow Sambandha Rupa Bhakti practice Sambandha Nuga Bhakti, because Anuga means to follow. And those who follow Kama Rupa Bhakti are engaging in the aspect of Raga Nuga called Kama Nuga Bhakti. So clear? Maybe I need a second whiteboard to make all this.
Yes.
But anyhow, later we can re-elaborate that. So I'm just saying this because my Guru Maharaj uses the expression here, Sambandha Nuga Bhakti. So you know what he's referring to.
Just a little question. In this Kamanika Bhakti,
Ah.
then there are also gopis included. It's not just about Radha. Or there
Of
are
course,
gopis
of course,
who are very
of course, of course. Different, all different possibilities in the context of romantic relationship. Yeah. So they're going back to my Guru Maharaj's commentary, as I mentioned before. He for a minute, apart from analyzing this verse, goes 2 verses ahead. Another famous verse. There are so many famous verses in this verse, in this Brahma-stuti. So in that verse, Brahma seems to be praying for any form in Vrindavan, so he may receive the dust from the Brajavasis. But my Guru Maharaj is clarifying, actually he's praying for Sakya. But since he's expressing extreme humility, he doesn't feel just to ask Krishna, give me Sakya. he's here saying how fortunate, this is the greatest fortune. And then he, in full humility, saying, may I be born anywhere in Braj so I can receive the dust of the Brajavasis. And why Brahma is feeling this extreme humility? Because still in his situation, try to remember, he feels some measure of shame for having offended Krishna's friends some minutes ago. No? He tried to kidnap them. He thought that Krishna's form was not the real, he was an imposter. He interrupted the picnic. No? So Brahma feels I engage in Rupa Parad, Lila Parad, Parikara Parad. My gosh. But he wants Sakya, but at the same time, the humility comes and he's like, anyhow. No? He expresses his willingness to Sakya with some restraint due to this humility. So even if we analyze today's verse, as we will do, in one sense, may seem that the verse in general speaks about the good fortune, extreme good fortune, of all of the cowherd kingdom of Nanda Maharaj. He said, Nanda Gopa Brajo Kasham, which means the people who lives in the village of Nanda Maharaj. But we'll see how this specifically points to Sakya. In one sense, we could say that Brahma is saying the whole of Braj is the land of friendship. If you want to take friendship in a more also general way, everything is friendly there. Everyone is collaborating to serve the same center with lots of intimacy. Also, we could say Braj is the only place that you will find actually the possibility of Sakya. In Vaikuntha, you cannot have Sakya with Narayan. Don't try. Gopakumar tried, didn't work. In Ajodhya with Ram, you can have one half-like expression of that when you see Lakshman. I mean, you can see that in others, but you cannot attain that yourself. That's an Ajodhya is an interesting abode. My Guru Maharaj says always, if you go to Ayodhya, if you go to Vaikuntha, you see everyone is relating to Narayan in Dasya Bhav or Santa Bhav, no? Just passive meditation somewhere else in another side of the planet. That's all. Narayan has no mother, no father. Madhurya, only Lakshmi, and in a very Dasya-like way. But no Sakya. Nobody will treat Narayan on equal terms. He's God. Then if you go one step further to Ayodhya, you will see, oh, here Narayan appears as Ram. He has a wife, and the relationship is more Madhurya-like. Not only she's like massaging her feet like as a menial servant like Lakshmi Narayan in Vaikuntha. And also Narayan, Ramchandra has father and mother. He also has brother, which could be a form of Sakya. No, Lakshman, Bharat, Satrugna. But nobody can attain those positions in Ayodhya. You cannot attain Vatsalya for Ram, Sakya for Ram. You can only go through the window of Dasya, the Dasya of Hanuman. So, although only Dasya is possible in Ajodhya for a sadhaka who will like that, Ajodhya is showing that there are other rasas as well, although you cannot attain them. So indirectly, Ajodhya is pointing to Braj. You follow? It's showing all the things are here. You cannot attain them here, but look there. All the things that you cannot attain but are here, you can attain them there.
It's like the rishis in Dandakaranya who fell in love with Ram. He has only one Sita.
Ekapatni Brat. He couldn't reciprocate. He say, you will have to come with me to Braj. Krishna Lila will be able to fulfill that need. So that's in the context of Madhurya Bhav. But here we can extend this idea to Sakya. Someone wants Sakya, that's Braj. That's the realm of Braj. In that sense, we can say Braj is the land of friendship also. Also, we could say in Braj, the Dasya of Braj, for example, as I say, the Dasya of Braj is tinged with friendship. And there are different forms of Sakya, as we spoke the other day. That also includes Dasya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. So in one sense, you can find combinations of the other rases with Sakya there. As we will see when Jiva Goswami will say that the Madhurya of the Gopis is mixed with Sakya in his Priti Sandarbha. So from that perspective, you could say there is Sakya everywhere. So this is the land of Sakya. Yeah. So in this way, this is more precisely a statement in which Brahma is expressing his own budding Sakya. No? This verse is not just about the glory of Braj in general, but his own Sakya, budding Sakya coming to the surface. So he's glorifying Krishna's intimate friends here. In a general way, Braj is the land of friendship, but I want a certain type of friendship, and there are certain type of friends that I would like to become one of them. So we will see how this takes place. So regarding Brahma's aho, or astonishment, many verses before, in the beginning, Brahma will say to Krishna, I cannot understand your form. Because you are all pervading, but also you appear middle size. So your form goes beyond my head. No? He quoted the example of Yashoda when she looked at Krishna's mouth. So Krishna was there in the world. No? His form was in the world. And when she looked at her mouth, the world was in Krishna's mouth. And Krishna was inside the world, inside his mouth. But when she looked out, Krishna was still there. So Brahma began saying, I cannot understand your form. And then he went further and he saw, I cannot understand the bliss inside your form. And now he's going to a point where he says, I cannot understand the bliss taking form outside your form. What do I mean by this? In this case, his sakas, his gopas, are forms of bliss. Now, Krishna's bliss is Swarup Shakti. When the Swarup Shakti takes a form, it appears as a gopa, as a gopi. So Brahma says, I can understand your form, I can understand your Swarup Shakti inside your form, and I can understand when your Swarup Shakti takes a form outside your form, which comes in the form of your associates, especially your friends, Brahma will say here. No? And as we say, that those forms that come outside of your form, in one sense, are giving shape to your form, Krishna. The type of love of a devotee makes the absolute appear in a particular form. Like the famous story when Krishna is with the gopis in Rasa Lila and he disappears. I mean, there are many. So in this one, he adopts the form of Narayan.
Der nahm dann die Form von Narayana.
So the gopis are looking for Krishna, and they find on the way God. Try to imagine you're looking something on the way, God is standing on the way. And the gopis only had one question to ask Narayan. Narayan, you are God, you are omniscient, so you know everything. Can you tell us where is Krishna? So Krishna was like, oh my God. God was saying, oh my God. How can they love me so much? I mean, they don't care for God. They only care for God as to know where I am. So Krishna did not know what to say. His voice choked and didn't reply. So the gopis say, God's not replying. Let's continue looking for Krishna. And they ran. For the first time, Narayan was not omniscient. But then Radha came after the gopis, and they say that her love is such, it's giving so much shape to Krishna, that Krishna was standing like Chaturbhuj with 4 arms, but Radha's love was so intense that suddenly 2 of the 4 arms entered, and immediately he became Tribanga. So the lesson is the love of Radha is giving shape to Krishna. You follow my point? In poetic terms, we could say God, Krishna is carved by the love of his devotees. If you take Radha out and you bring Hanuman into the picture, Krishna will, instead of being like this with the flute, he will appear with bow and arrow, Ram. He will take the shape that corresponds with the love that is coming to him. This is a very important point. Krishna has a spiritual body, but that spiritual body takes shape out of a particular bhav, a spiritual emotion that he's living only to reciprocate with. So in this sense, Brahma is starting to awake to all these things here, no? Realizing, oh, this form, Brahma is seeing Krishna now in front. Remember, he has Krishna there. He's realizing this form that you are showing me corresponds with the love of your friends. This enchanting form of you actually is a byproduct of their love. So now Brahma is turning his attention from Krishna, from Vishaya Alambana, to those who give shape to that Krishna, to Ashraya Lambana. No? From the object of love to the vessel of love, to the recipients of love, who are more important for us. For us, the devotees are more important than Krishna, because our goal is not Krishna. Our goal is Krishna Prem. So those who personify Krishna Prem personify the goal we want to attain. I mean, we don't want Krishna without Prem. For what do you want Krishna if there is no Krishna Prem? So Krishna Prem is the goal of life for us. Prem. Of course, Prem is the goal of life for Krishna also. Even if you attain Prem, you can always attain more Prem, as we spoke. It's an ongoing affair. Yeah.
Can I just quickly ask, are there eternal shapes? Because you said he appears. Are there eternal shapes, forms? Because you said Krishna appears, like when Radha he changes shape. So are there as many forms than there are jivas? Like if someone worships him and, as a silly example, sees him always purple, would he then appear purple?
I get the point. There's one verse in the Bhagavatam, the 3rd canto. Brahma mentions that, says, Tvam bhakti yoga parivad bhita hirit saroja ase srutekshitapate nanunata pumshan what is Tattadhyata rugaya vibhava yanti yad yad bapu pranayase sadanugrahaya. So basically, Brahma, what he's saying there is, according your devotees meditate on you in certain way, and you reveal in a form according to their meditation. Now the question is, so that means that I can imagine any form of Krishna and his form to appear in that form? I can think of he's playing an electric guitar and has horns and is yellow and is green. No. So the word that explains that is Shruta Ikshita. Shruta Ikshita means to see, and Shruta means Shruti, which means revelation, Shastra, what is heard from revelation. So those who see you through what revelation is revealing, through what Shastra is revealing, they will worship you according to the parameters of Shastra. So Shastra will describe that Bhagavan has asankhya, unlimited forms, but the fact that he has unlimited form doesn't mean that he can have any form I like. So there will be a good amount of options, and among those that are revealed by Shastra, one will engage in corresponding sadhana to attain that, and Krishna will reveal himself accordingly. So that's it. That will be the answer. There are limited forms. They are not limited, but it doesn't mean there any form can go, basically. No? Let me share with you now, before going to the other commentaries, because my Guru Maharaj wrote a commentary on the Brahma-stuti, as I've shared with you. But also this was not enough for him in connection to this verse. So in his forthcoming book, he has written one appendix to the book, which is only an explanation on this verse. I won't read the whole appendix, it's quite long, but I'll share some points. A little bit here and a little bit at the end today. So he says, interestingly, in Priti Sandarbha, which is one book of Jiva Goswami about basically Prem, Prayojan, Jiva Goswami characterizes this verse as an example of something called rasolas, which means the exultation of rasa. How understand the cleverness of how Brahma uses some words in this verse. Because apparently on an external level, at first glance, this verse appears to constitute a rasa abhas. Rasa abhas means an incompatible mixture of modes. Why? Because one part of the verse is saying Purnam Brahma. So you are the complete absolute. That doesn't sound too Brajavasi. That sounds more like Santa Rati or something like that. No? And on the other side, he's praising Sakyarati. So this sounds like an improper combination. So in which sense, this is not Rasa Abhas and it's Rasa Ulas. We have to remember that all of these verses spoken by Brahma, in one sense, spoken by Sukadev to Parikshit in a greater context. And we have to remember Sukadev was born as a Brahmavadi before being converted to Bhakti, if you want to put it like that. He was an Atmaram, he was attracted to Brahman when he was born. He was born at 16 years. No, he came out of the womb, another story. So we could say that at some point his chitta was slightly influenced still by his previous Gyan Bhakti Samskars. So although he was at this point totally under the influence of Raga Bhakti and the Bhagavatam, we could say that due to his background, in this moment he's using this Upanishadic reverential expression, Purna Brahma. But actually he's using that word in glorification of Sakya Rasa. So Srila Jiva Goswami says, by this clever use of by this unique usage of words, which point to glorify Sakyarasa, the actual result is an experience of unprecedented wonder, or chamatkar, in the heart of Sukadev and also in Brahma's heart. So Jiva Goswami concludes saying, while ordinarily such an incompatible combination will result in rasa abhas, in this verse, however, rather than the undesirable rasa abhas, we find the most desirable rasolas, which means, again, divine exaltation in devotional mellows or something. Some detail in this connection, which instead of creating something negative, will create a special charm. So let's go to some of the.
It's just,
yes.
It's so beautiful. In one way, it's like we said previously, we need the basic level of Aishwarya. My God, this is the absolute truth, the all-pervading. But these inhabitants, they consider him as his friend. So then this is this ulad. Wow.
Yeah, it's creating this contrast,
Exactly.
and the special double aho. Yeah, exactly. Sridhar Swami, in connection to aho, let's go to Sridhar Swami's commentary, Bhavarta Deepika. He says the repetition of aho twice signifies that the good fortune has no limit whatsoever. In other words, he only says aho twice, but he could be saying aho unlimitedly. No? Just saying aho once indicates I'm astonished. So I'm saying aho twice, it means there's no end to my astonishment. As we said yesterday, we could be just forever saying aho. Remember, Brahma has found his own portal at this point. No? He has seen himself there, no? His own potential appearing in front of him. Once on a separate line but in connection, once Srila Siddhar Maharaj said, tomorrow we will be celebrating his disappearance, the 80th of Bhav Mahotsav. Srila Siddhar Maharaj said, one day he was asked, who is the Guru? Who is Sri Guru? He said, Sri Guru is your own potential appearing in front of you. All that you can become appearing personified in front of you, showing by example all that you can be. That's beautiful, but that's a big commitment also, because it's a constant remembrance of all that you can be. It shouldn't be neurosis, it should be inspirational. So somehow Brahma, following these words, he's founding himself, his potential. Oh, I can become like those friends. So Brahma has found his own portal here, where again, unlimited good fortune is waiting for them. That's his experience of good fortune. And also in connection to good fortune, we can connect this verse, as we should, as we will. This verse could be seen as an extension of another verse, a very important Sakyarasa verse, if you will, which is mentioned by Sukadev Goswami in chapter 12 of the 10th canto, in the 11th birth, in the Agasur Lila. No, Krishna Chand is tempted to quote the verse immediately, so we will allow him to do it. Yes, please. Itam tatam brahma sukhanu bhutya dasyam gatanam paradaivatena mayasritanam naradharakena sakham bijahru kitapunja punja. This is a very beautiful verse spoken by Sukadev Goswami. This just before the Brahma Vimohan Lila. in the context of the Agasur Lila and the picnic that the boys are having with Krishna. So Sukadeva Goswami is witnessing the situation, the absolute having picnic. So he pronounces this verse in full wonder. He doesn't say aho, but it's between the lines. Aho. He says Krita Punja Punja. That's the version of aho Bhagyam here. So what does Sukadeva Goswami says in this verse? He's saying all the gopas used to play with Krishna. He reflects on the situation. No? These cowherd boys are treating him like an equal. And they are treating him like an equal, he who is Brahman for the Gyanis. Or he who is Bhagavan for those devotees who accepted servitorship to him. Or he who for ordinary people is just an ordinary boy. But these cowherd boys, having accumulated punya for who knows how many lifetimes, were able to associate with Krishna as friends. I go there. Punya means like good fortune. So they have accumulated good fortune or piety, sometimes it is said. I will mention something now. And he concludes saying, how can one explain their good fortune? So this expression, Krita Punya Punja, which means what must have they done? What Punya sometimes is connected to material piety. But of course, you cannot become a friend of Krishna just by material piety. So here the word punya means bhakti sukriti, devotional credit. There are many verses in Shastra which use the word punya to refer to this. Indeed, in my book, I wrote a whole chapter of that, on the sukriti. Because it may be confused, like, oh, you can do good acts on the world, sattvic things, pious activities, and that can make me be born as a gopi. No, it doesn't work like that. So the idea with this is, Sukadeva Goswami is also wondering, who must be these boys? What must have they done to reach such a platform? Like implying they seem to be gopas, but in one sense they're actually sadhus. So they are also gopas, of course, but they are sadhus. In other words, if you want to attain them, first you have to become a sadhu here. If you want to become a gopa or a gopi, first you have to become a sadhu, a sadhaka. Krishna himself is praising the love of the gopis as sadhuis. They are sadhu. Napara yiham nirabhajya sanjuyam swasadhu krityam vibudaya sapiva jamabha jandurjara geha shrinkala sambrishya tatva pratyato sadhuna. So in this verse, we will speak about that verse in our last meeting. Famous verse, very important one. But basically, Krishna is saying to the gopis, expressing his depth of love to them, and saying, you are such sadhus. Your sadhu-ness is such that I cannot repay back. So you seem ordinary village girls, but you are sadhus. And your sadhu-ness takes a very unique form. So the same with the gopas here. They are sadhus. You see them that in Gaur Lila, when they come as sadhakas, they are sadhus. And the lesson for us is, we are not yet gopas, gopis. If someone wants that, first you have to become a sadhu. First you have to go through Gaur Lila and be a paka sadhaka. And that will really show how much you want to be a gopa and a gopi. Yeah, it's clear the idea? Okay, so I want to connect with this verse because it's another verse from the bottom, very beautiful one, which quite tied with this one. Also, Jiva Goswami, when he comments Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when Rupa Goswami is describing Nava Laksham Bhakti, which means Bhakti that can be divided in 9 aspects: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Shmaranam, Padasevanam, Bandhanam, Dasan, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. he says this verse, today's verse, Ahovagyam, this can be an example of the spirit of Sakyam. As an anga of sadhana, as a limb of sadhana, for those sadhakas who are spiritually advanced. So spiritually advanced sadhakas can meditate on this verse as something that helps them to enter into this sakyam, this mood of friendship with Krishna. Okay, let's go to Sanatana Goswami's commentary. Still, we have a long way to go, so second seat belt, please. Does Krishna Chandra need some water? No? I have one here just in case.
So much rasa flowing.
You are drowning in. You need less water. So Sanatana Goswami begins his Brihad Vaishnava Tosani, his commentary, referring first to the previous verse. So he said, not only the ones who gave their breasts are extremely fortunate, all the inhabitants are extremely fortunate in Braj, including Nanda and many others. So in one general way, we could say Brahma is expressing the good fortune of all Brajavasis. So we can see how the same verse can have a very general meaning and more specific. Then Sanatana Goswami says, the repetition, Aho Bhagyam, saying 2 times the same thing, is due to Brahma's overwhelming joy, or is suggestive of the great good fortune of the Brajavasis. So it's Brahma's own joy or the Brajavasis' good fortune. Of course, one is connected with the other. Not like Krita Punja Punja, the other verse we mentioned. And the intention with this, Sanatan says, is Brahma is implying, what can one say about their good fortune? So he's implying Kaimutya Nyaya, what's called Kaimutya Nyaya, which means, if I say, what can we say about the good fortune, means we can never say enough. There's no reply to the question. Nobody can say enough. Then Sanatana Goswami continues saying, by saying that the Brajavasi's friend is he who is Paramananda, the following is implied. Paramananda means the highest bliss. Paramananda. Imagine, who is your friend? Paramananda. So the implication of my friend is Paramananda is any idea that those inhabitants ever experience sadness, grief, or even just a slight happiness is repudiated. Like we spoke the other day, no? It may sound painful what they are going through sometimes, that their friend, their lover, their everything is he who is Paramananda. So how can there be place for suffering or even slight happiness? No? That's a form of suffering in comparison.
Always great.
Yeah, always Parama. Parama means supreme, not just Ananda. Ananda is like, there's so many layers of degrees of Ananda. As we spoke the other day, no? So even slight happiness is repudiated here with the name Paramananda. And then Sanatana Goswami...
This means,
yes,
it's implied also that we spoke yesterday, all this viraha,
yes,
intense pain of separation,
That's-
actually,
yeah, we
is
were
a
saying
form of
exactly.
ecstasy.
It's just another form of ecstasy. Like once devotee once said, he said he expressed this suffering in separation as paradoxical joy. Still is joy, but taking a form that is paradoxical. It doesn't seem that. But at the closer look, it's like, wow. And this Paramananda, Sanatana Goswami qualifies that further with the word Brahman, which also Brahman means like all-pervading. So he says such friendship is spread everywhere. It's all pervading here in Braj. So how can there be such Paramananda coming from the friendship is everywhere? So how can there be place for something different from that? Hmm? And he says the fact that this friendship is spread everywhere means that Krishna is available everywhere. And the fact that this friendship is Sanatanam or eternal, not only every place but all time, eternal, means that anyone can reach up to him at any time. So that's Krishna's availability. You have your japa mala, that's your cell phone. 108 to call Krishna. And he's always, there's no answering machine. Now I'm busy, I have so many things to do, I'm cow herding, I'm with the gopis. He's doing all those things also, but he's answering immediately. You won't hear like I'm speaking with someone else, sorry. So many people chanting japa this time. Better you find a better time when I'm not. As I like to say, even this Krishna's grace through Srinam is such that you invoke the name and it may seem, okay, I'm chanting Krishna's name to call him. But Krishna is not somewhere else. You invoke his name and he's already there. So in the very moment you are calling him, he's there. So that shows how available he is. Everywhere, at any time, immediately. Even before you end up to chant his name, he's right there before you ended up calling him.
This way one can even say chanting is like praying by chitya. This means even in his presence, I'm still calling. Because the devotee doesn't stop at that time. So this is like praying by chitya.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it. Praying by chitya is separation in union. We mentioned that yesterday. Yeah. Sanatan Goswami will give some other commentaries. As I told you, he likes to give a meaning and then he will say or, and then he will say or, and he will give so many possibilities. So he says now, or the idea of the verse is, the Brajavasis are the eternal friends of you who are the complete Brahman. Now you always reside here in Braj as their eternal friend. You are giving them Paramananda, but as a friend, not as Ishvar. If you will give them Paramananda as Ishvar, which can happen, that will decrease their special love. Because the Gopas want to relate to Krishna as equals. So if your equal becomes Ishvar, there's no more equality. It's like, he's Ishvar now. Then Sanatan Goswami concludes making a very interesting point. He will refer to Krishna's lovers, the gopis. So he says, the Lord's lovers, Sri Radha and others, are of course also glorious. But their glory is not clearly pointed out here. And he gives some reasons for that. Why? First possibility, maybe because that rasa has not begun yet at this time. In other words, Krishna now is in his Poganda age. So still in the chronological unfolding of the earthly lila, his romantic interaction with the gopis has not officially begun yet. So we could say that's why Brahma is not mentioning that. Or Brahma didn't mention that because he feels uncomfortable describing that. I mean, uncomfortable, why? Because one says Brahma is Krishna's son. Remember, born from the lotus, which come from. So he feels like embarrassed, like, oh, I have to speak about my father's romantic affairs, and or he didn't do so. He didn't spoke about that because such love is most confidential, a secret affair, parakia especially. No? So probably Brahman. Another reason why he's silent in this section. So,
Sorry.
yes.
Would that mean he doesn't know, or he knows and it's secret to,
Who?
share Brahma
He doesn't know what.
about Parakia,
He doesn't.
the relationship?
Well, I'll be speaking about that. Let me share some ideas, and because I was just going that direction, and we will think about that together. Because somehow in this connection to this Madhurya point, let's remember some verses ago, Brahma spoke about Santa, verse 24, like 8 verses ago. Then he spoke about Dasya in verse 30. I think we were here at the time, first class maybe.
Yes.
And then he even more directly spoke about Vatsalya in the previous verse. And after Vatsalya, he's praising Sakya Bhav here. So, and I'm going to your point, give me a minute. So one may ask also, why he praised first Vatsalya and then Sakya? When generally, sometimes we hear that the sequence is Santa, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. But he did Santa, Dasya, Vatsalya, Sakya. And no Madhurya clearly, and we explain why here now. So, is there any reason? Of course, one could say, well, he concluded in Sakya because that's Brahma's affinity. That's one reason. Again, there are many reasons we can entertain. Also, interestingly, Jiva Goswami in his Priti Sandarbha, I'm quoting too much Priti Sandarbha, but it's a very interesting book. Although Rupa Goswami first quotes Sakya and then Vatsalya in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in his Priti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami quotes first Sakya and then first Vatsalya and then Sakya. So we could say that somehow this means that for Jiva Goswami, Sakya excels Vatsalya in excellence. And in which sense we could say that this is possible? One will say Sakya is favorable to Madhurya Rasa. Rupa Goswami speaks in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu about friendly rasas and enemy rasas. To give you an example, Vatsalya and Madhurya are enemy rasas. It's not that they hate each other in the Leela. It's just that they are incompatible. One example of that. At night, Yashoda is with Krishna, and she accompanies Krishna to his bedroom. And her greatest desire is that Krishna will have very sound, deep sleep the whole night. All the Vatsalya camp is praying for that. But do you think the Madhurya camp is praying for the same thing? They are praying, may Krishna join us for Rasa Leela all night. So in that sense, the two of them go in different directions. But Sakya and Madhurya are compatible in that sense. Because as we mentioned, they are friends of Krishna that are actually even facilitating and assisting him in his romantic pursuits. Even we could say also that Jiva Goswami, as I mentioned before, he mentioned that the Madhurya of the gopis is mixed with some Sakya, some friendship with Krishna. It's a romantic friendship, if you will. But also we could say that Sakya is put above Vatsalya because in the most intimate form of Sakya, which is Priyanarma Sakya, remember we spoke about 4 types of Sakya? So it is said that the ultimate, the most confidential form of Sakya, Priyanarma Sakya, the experience of the Narma Sakas can reach up to Mahabhav. Yeah. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes that point. Of course, there are developments in Mahabhav, and gopis will go a little further in those developments. But in comparison to Vatsalya, for example, Vatsalya is not reaching Mahabhav. Now there are developments of Prem, Sneha, Man, Pranaya, Raga, Anurag, Bhav, Mahabhav. Priyanarma Sakas can reach Mahabhav, but Vatsalya cannot. So in that sense, we could also say Sakya can be put above Vatsalya. Again, above in an objective analysis of the ecstatic experience. Subjectively, for everyone will be, this is the best, this is the best, this is the best. So now, okay, we are mentioning this about Narmasaka, and we could ask, so is Brahma a Narmasaka? Will he like to be a Narmasaka? And therefore, he will know about what Aishwarya asked about? Well, we could say that the fact that he's putting Sakya, describing it after Vatsalya, may hint at that possibility. But to be honest, at least in my knowledge, there is no like clear supporting evidence from Shastra that it is said, this is the type of Sakya Brahma wanted. Of course, we can say that Brahma put Sakya again above Vatsalya because that's his own desire in general. And maybe we may say, no, this is not about the details of Brahma's specific affinity, but actually this could be the case also. He can have that affinity.
But even in Brahma Samhita, he speaks like Ananda Chinmaya Radha Pratipad. He speaks about the gopis there. So this means even at the beginning of the creation, he has some insight.
So that's possibilities that the insight will keep growing in time. So in that sense, we could say there is a good amount of possibility that was his ultimate choice. And in that case, we could say, of course, he knows. He knows. Of course, Priyanarma Sakas are totally familiar with Krishna's romantic life. I mean, they are serving that romantic side. Okay, let's go from Sanatana Goswami's commentary to Srila Jiva Goswami. So we receive further life. Jiva Jivasya Jivanam. No? The Bhagavatam says, as a play of word, the Bhagavatam says, in another context, I'm taking that in another context. The original Bhagavatam verse says Jiva Jivasya Jivana, which is kind of a Darwinian line, which means one Jiva is the Jiva for another Jiva. Now, like one living entity is the food of another living entity. Survival of the fittest. But we can also take it Jiva Jivasya Jivanam. Jiva, Sri Jiva Goswami, is the one who is giving Jiva to us Jivas. No? He's giving us new life by his words and teachings. That's it. Next time you read that line, you already know. Now, from Darwin to Jiva Goswami. That's some upgrading on the reading of the verse. Jiva Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. So he starts saying in his Lagu Vaishnava Toshani, Brahma spoke this verse upon pondering, thinking. Your glory as expressed in the Upanishads does not do justice to your full glory. Your full glory surpasses everything the Upanishad have said. As we said yesterday, no? Srotan api Upanishadam dure harikatamrita. Upanishad have certain reach and speak about Brahman, the absolute, mostly in impersonal terms. But Brahma is saying, what I'm saying now, you your entourage, your friend, your braj. I mean, where is this in the Upanishads? Upanishad may seem Raso Vai Saha, may hint at that. Huh? Brahman is rasa, but generally they are silent about that. In which sense he is rasa? You go to the Bhagavad and you understand in which sense. Then Srila Jiva Goswami continues saying, when Brahma is saying how amazing is their good fortune of the boys, he implies that the mercy that Krishna is showing to the Gopas is anirvachaniya. It's a term that generally Sankara uses. Anirvachaniya means inexplicable, inexpressible. Of course, Sankara uses that in another context. But when Brahma is saying here, how fortunate, how fortunate, I cannot find words to say how merciful you are to these boys. And Jiva Goswami says, and Brahma repeats the same phrase twice with boldness. Again, to show the extreme fortune of the boys and to express his own astonishment while seeing that good fortune. And why he's astonished and why that good fortune? Because Krishna, who is the greatest bliss, Paramanandam, is giving them a love that is suitable for natural friends. This is a nice exercise for us as sadhakas also. To experience astonishment at how Krishna is being merciful to other devotees. Not only to ourselves, of course, also to ourselves, but it's nice to appreciate, to get to know other devotee. As a devotee means to witness the degree of mercy that has come to their lives. Like sometimes devotees will ask you, how did you met the devotees? Tell me your story. And it's a way of, because in every story there's always some miracle and some unique type of mercy that you're like, wow, I'm astonished to see how the grace that Krishna showed on you and on you and on you. So it's a nice exercise. That's my point as sadhakas, to remain in that frequency of appreciating mercy in astonishment. Because sometimes we lose this sense of astonishment. That can be our greatest misfortune. We take things for granted and we get accustomed and everything becomes normal, ordinary, boring. So you need to rekindle this fire of chamatkar, astonishment. So if you are boring, you go ask a devotee, how do you met the devotees? And it's like, special mercy. Of course, that's not the only way to see that, but that's the principle. Try to remain astonished at how merciful Krishna is to every devotee, including yourself, of course. Don't forget that. That's a very important prayer and meditation. How Krishna's mercy is being shown today to me, how it's coming, which form is taking in the life of others. Because if only I'm speaking about me, that may be a form of selfish meditation also. Or thinking, how Krishna is only merciful to me. Oh, so nice. If you really want to appreciate Krishna's mercy, you should be able to find it everywhere. So here Brahma is showing us that lesson. No? He's appreciating how Krishna is so merciful to these friends. How lucky are them? But my point with this also is, when he's saying how lucky are them, Brahma actually means how lucky I am. Because I'm receiving the opportunity to become one of them. You follow? So when you study, I don't know, the life of a great sadhu, and you say, oh, how lucky she is. How much mercy Krishna gave to that person. The implication is how lucky I am. because I can know about that person, I can serve that person, and I can receive the mercy that that person received. You are not left out of the equation. You follow? That's the nature of mercy. If you appreciate mercy anywhere, it goes to you as well. It's not that, oh, how mercy to this, but I have not received that. If you want, you can receive that. Mercy is merciful. And of course, Brahma is experiencing that. How mercy they are, how mercy I am. How fortunate they are. How fortunate I am to witness their fortune. Even if I'm not there, just to witness their fortune, that's my fortune. And sometimes I like to say that maybe we don't have prem, bhav, or even advanced stages in bhakti. But if you have the fortune of being close to someone who has that, just by being in their proximity, not physical, but internally, you may not have their same experience, but you will have an experience of being close to their experience. And that's a whole experience in itself. You follow? Someone has prem, you are close to someone who has prem. Doesn't mean you have prem, but you have the experience of someone who has prem. And that may be the beginning of you attaining prem eventually. So it happened with Brahma. Brahma is not yet there, but the portal is open. He's seeing that, and he's feeling the invitation. Oh.
Can I ask the word prem is only intending love of Krishna? Because love, or prem is generally love, or it's only the love of God?
The problem, if you will, with Sanskrit is that one word can refer to many things. So you need context. Prem can even refer to mundane lust.
Thank you. Enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the context is everything. I've recently started to study Sanskrit more in detail. And the interesting thing is that any sentence, the words in a sentence can be in any order. It's not like our languages that there has to be some order and structure. The words can be. So the point is, how will you make sense of what's the meaning of the sentence? And the reply is by the context. In which context everything comes. So it's very interesting. It's a language that pushes so much about the importance of context. So one same word can mean the exact opposite in a different context.
Yeah, but also other love, not only from Krishna.
And of course, yeah, of course, you can speak about Vaikuntha Prem, Ayodhya Prem. What to speak if it refers to mundane love, how much can it apply to everywhere else in transcendence? So Brahma's again.
Can I ask-
Yes.
You said that you don't need to have physically meet, just internally. Is it possible, like if I have never met a sadhu that has this prem, just by reading the book of him, I can experience it?
That's a way. That's a way of having an experience. I mean, of course, it all depends. My point was, physical proximity is not necessarily a warranty of proximity. As I said the other day, no? Tad vidhi pranipatena. Gita says you have to surrender Sri Guru to Sri Guru. Srila Prabhupada translates pranipatena, you have to approach Sri Guru. But the actual meaning is surrender. So the idea is approaching Sri Guru means surrendering to Sri Guru. That's the only way you can approach. It's not just physically be next. In all the pictures you appear, I'm really close, I'm really intimate. No. Of course.
You always say how important sadhu sangha is, and I always understood sadhu sangha really means like we are now.
Yeah.
So
But
for me, it's physical what we're now. Also in the heart, but also physical.
I mean, the physical movement is here. Of course, all of us had to move a lot to reach Ananda Dham. I mean, some of us at least. But again, the physicality is not the all in all. I can come here and do any nonsense here, so I have to give my heart after having moving my body, and you moved your body because your heart was moved before. It all begins with an internal movement that tells you, let me take all this trouble to walk the mountain, if you will, so I can be with devotees here. It's all about something internal, and then something external will follow. But in some cases, physical association may not be available. Some, let's say, emergency case. For example, Bhakti Pragyan Kesava Maharaj will speak about Shastriya Sadhu Sangha in those cases. You have Sadhu Sangha by Shastra. There's a possibility you can receive the mercy of the sadhu by studying their books. I remember once Srila Narayana Maharaj told one of his disciples, if I give you the blessings to study the books of the Goswamis, you will learn much more from that study than even if you hear from me personally. So he wanted to make a point. The point was, you are reading a book, you are not hearing from the sadhu, but the sadhu gave the blessing that you read the book. So in that way, the sadhu is giving the blessings to follow. So he wanted to make that point. And of course, the point is, ideally, scriptural study should be conducted with the blessings of the sadhus, not just whimsically. I will take this book today, I will read that one, but with the blessings of the sadhus. Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta will say, if you study Shastra independent of the sadhus, the result of that study will be Gyan, not Bhakti. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Bhakti comes from Bhakti. Bhakti sanjataya bhaktya. No, you can remain a Jnani forever. So the point is, you take the book and you get information, but not transformation, maybe. Because that was done independently from. Anyhow, some topics. Let's continue because. So the point is, Brahma is feeling extreme good fortune in connection with Sakya. He feels this is really fortunate. Why in Sakya? Of course, in all Brajabha, but he has affinity for Sakya. Outside of Raj, you have the worshipper, you have the worshipped, and you have the worship. These three things are clearly delineated. Object of worship, the one who is worshipping, and the worship. All the things disappear in love. Especially in Sakya, which is equals. We are equals. There's no more object of worship, worshipper, and worship. There's total equality. One aspect of Sakya, which is very prominent, which also appears in Madhurya, is pranay. So pranay requires a whole different series of lectures. The very idea of pranay. But basically, pranay refers to oneness in love. A type of oneness in which you don't feel there is a difference between you and your beloved. I'm not referring to Brahma Sayuja, that type of oneness, impersonal one. But a type of loving when you love someone, her body is your body is her body. If you don't love someone, you're walking in the street and you just like touch someone, and excuse me. There's a difference between your body and my body. But if you are with your intimate friend, whatever happens, it's not like, oh, sorry, excuse me. Because there's, you and I are, as my Guru Maharaj likes to say, there's a dynamic union in love. How does it happen? You and I become we. No, it's like a unity emerging in love. You follow, like when you are having a bath, you are not having clothes probably, but you are not feeling ashamed of being in that situation because it's your body. But if someone else enters, it's like, oops, because it's someone else. No? You follow? Still, you have this notion of we are separate. But in pranaya means there's no sense of difference. We are one. And that's why, for example, the friends of Krishna in the picnic, they were trying something. Oh, this is so good. Put Krishna in the mouth immediately, because their own mouths are extensions of Krishna's mouth. So they have no inhibition, no filter. So Brahma is saying all this and saying, oh, again. Such a fortune, such an intimacy of love. Then Jiva Goswami goes to the word Brahman for a moment. So you say, in relation to this word, how does the Shruti define Brahman? That's interesting. So the Shruti first, it says, why Brahman is called as such? Because it increases and it causes an increase. As we already explained these days, no? That's a constancy and changing nature of the absolute change. And then he quotes the Vishnu Purana, who says, they know the supreme Brahman, which is so called because it is huge and because it increases. So again, we hear all the things, and they cannot apply to Brahman as impersonal, nirgun, nirvishesh. There is no increase, change. There's no movement. There's no qualities there. So this applies to Purnam Brahma, in which the unchanging nature of the absolute is constant evolution, as we said. Also, it is said, Jiva Goswami quotes the Taittiriya Upanishad, why Brahman is called great. Sometimes Brahman means the great. He says, after multiplying the bliss by 100 each time from a human to Brahma, he lists a list of 11 categories. He says, a young, beautiful, learned man experiences some bliss. But on top of that, he starts to speak about Gandharvas, Devas, Indra, Brihaspati, Brahma, not Brahman, Brahma, the different levels of bliss. And then the Shruti says that the bliss of Brahman, the absolute, is 100 times more than the one of Brahma. It's a way of saying 100 times. It's not just like calculating, no? Because it's unlimited. By comparing, the highest bliss of the highest being in the universe is a joke in comparison to the bliss of Brahman. But even though that Brahman is glorifying the Shrutis as the greatest, here Brahma is realizing, but the bliss that I'm seeing here, that Purna Brahman is having with his friends, that's greater than the bliss of Brahman. So that's why Brahma uses the word Purna here. This is a complete form of Brahman, the fullness of it. And according to Jiva Goswami, Brahma thinks this kind of bliss has never been seen or heard anywhere, nor has such a friendship. So here's some important note, and it is that Jiva Goswami, although of course he's like all of the other 6 Goswamis, he's steeped in Manjari Bhav. His identity in the Leela is Bilas Manjari. Among the 6 Goswamis, there's nobody like Jiva Goswami who has expressed so much affinity towards Sakya Bhav. To say that when he was a boy, he used to worship deities of Krishna Balaram. And if you study Gopal Champu and other works he wrote, when he speaks about Sakya Bhav, he gets really fired up. To the point that you may think, oh, he's a Sakha. But not, he's a manjari. But when the turn comes to appreciate other modes, so also that's important teaching. No, it's not that only when my mood comes I will be fired up. And the other things, so he especially has some affinity for Sakya. There's place for that. So again, here we are speaking of Brahman, who is the all-pervasive, invisible absolute, if you will, but who is not considered Paramananda according to Brahma. Krishna, who is Purna Brahman, only Purna Brahman can be Paramananda. Purna Brahman can be Purna Ananda. Brahman by itself, Ananda. No? In Shastra, Brahman is described in terms of Ananda. But Paramananda, that's Purna Brahman. Krishna himself. No? In the Vedanta Sutra, it is said that if you attain mukti with a form, the bliss is greater than if you attain mukti without a form. So we could say similarly, the object of love for the mukta with a form is more blissful than the object of love for the mukta without a form. You follow my point? As there is more bliss in someone with form, I mean, there's more bliss in someone with form, whether it's the one who worships or the one who is worshipped, if you will. But interestingly, here the word Purna Brahman does not only refer to Brahman with a form, but to that form of the Absolute, which among many forms is the most complete. Because there are many forms of the Absolute. As we say, Vishnu, Narayan, Ram, unlimited. But the form of Krishna is the highest. Rupa Madhuri. He's the only one who has Rupa Madhuri. Rupa Goswami gives 64 attributes of Krishna. He says the first 50 can be found in the Jiva's degree. Then he says from this, a little bit more than this, 5 more can be found in greater personalities on some degree. And even the first 60 can be found even in Narayan. But there are 4 attributes that are only found in Krishna, in Vrindavan, not in any other form of the Absolute. Which are those 4 attributes which make Krishna Bhagavan, Swayam Bhagavan? I already said one. Which ones did I say before? Rupa Madhuri, which is Krishna has a very sweet form. Yashoda now says Benu.
The second one you also mentioned before.
Okay.
Is Prema Madhuri, he has devotees.
Yeah, maybe I didn't say it too clearly, but yeah, another one is Prema Madhuri. He experiences a very sweet type of love and makes his devotees experience that. Okay, then we have the whole equation. Tribhanga said Lila Madhuri, which is he has sweet pastimes. And Shodhyan say Benu Madhuri. He has a sweet flute. Other forms of the Godhead do not even have flute. What to speak a sweet one? As I said, Krishna outside of Braj. Even Krishna outside of Braj doesn't have flute. So these unique 4 defining features make Braja Krishna what Prabhupada would call the supreme personality of Godhead. The Godhead in his supreme personality. God has many personalities, but which is the supreme side of his personality? Krishna Stu Bhagavan Sayam. Or Braja Krishna Stu Bhagavan Sayam. To be more specific. Why not? Sorry, yeah.
You mentioned the no form ones. Is
The what, sorry?
You did say also the one with no forms, all the forms
Yeah.
God can have. You mentioned
Yeah,
so many.
yeah.
But before you also mentioned the no form. Is that then only entering Brahma energy?
Yeah.
That's no form. That's
Yeah.
the only one. There are
Yeah,
not
yeah.
lots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when we say the absolute without form,
Yeah,
we're
it's
referring
only
to
this
Brahman.
one. Yeah.
And those who attain liberation without form are those in that situation, basically. Yeah, that's the only place for the no form, if you will. Okay, let's go to Jiva Goswami's conclusion. He says, again, he shows his bias towards Sakya Bhava also here. He said the word mitram, friend, should be defined, since it is placed before Paramanandam. Paramanandam is the explanation of mitram, since it's placed later. He has to do with some grammatical details in Sanskrit. So basically it means, therefore, the meaning implied by Brahma by this is, in friendship, the highest bliss is attained. Again, that's his subjective experience. Objectively, there's highest bliss, but in his subjective, in Mitram, there's only Paramanandam in Mitram. The greatest bliss, Paramanandam, is found in Mitram, in friendship. So remember, Paramananda can refer to Krishna himself. No? He's the highest bliss himself. He's the giver of the highest bliss himself. But because Paramananda is following Mitram, Paramananda can be qualifying the word Mitram. So this case will mean Mitra is Paramananda. No? But Paramananda can be Krishna. Krishna is Paramananda. But also Mitra is Paramananda. It's the highest bliss in friendship. Ready to go to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's third seat belt. Next time I have to bring all my paraphernalia for the class. Seat belts and let's go to the Sarartha Darshini, Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad's counter. He says, having eulogized, glorified in the previous verses those who have Ragatmika Vatsalya Prem, in this verse, Brahma praises those who have Ragatmika Sakya Prem. While also somehow extolling, glorifying, as a matter of principle, those who have any type of rati for Krishna. No? Like Nanda, they are little Digopas. No? In this verse, all is pointed to Sakya, everyone else is included there also. So again, in general, this verse is speaking about Vrindavan and how Vrindavan is the land of friendship in general. But in more detail, the verse glorifying the Sakas. There is an interesting reading of this verse made by Nayanananda Thakur. He's the author of one book called Preyo Bhakti Rasarnava. Preyo Bhakti is another name for Sakya Bhakti. Rupa Goswami called Sakya Rasa Preyo Bhakti in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He wrote one book called Preyo Bhakti Rasarnava. I'll share that, which means we have it. Okay, like the ocean of Preyo Bhakti Rasa. So he has an affinity towards Priya Sakya. So he will read this verse in divine fanaticism, like saying Sakya is the only possible thing, the best for everyone. Everyone is after that. So let me read how he reads this verse through the lens of Sakya. This is the first chapter of Preyo Bhakti Rasarnava. Okay, we say this verse can refer to a glorification of Vrindavan as the land of Sakya. So following that line, Nayanananda Thakur says, just see. All these residents of Vrindavan, men, woman, or any other living being here, all desire to attain Sakyarati for Krishna. It is with this in mind that Vyasadeva had described the Brajavasis as Bhagyam, most fortunate. So that's the reading of Nayanananda Thakur. Now, why the word Bhagyam is used here? To refer to the fact that everyone in Vrindavan wants to be in Sakyarasa. So since they have their desire, they're the most fortunate. Again, it's not objectively the fact, but subjectively he's feeling that, he's seeing that. Oh, everyone wants that. No? And there's place for that, of course, there's place for that feeling.
It's like in Madhya Lila, at the end of Madhya Lila and Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami says, also without Gauranga, no one can attain anything.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like this bar.
Yeah, he will say, he who,
Out of complete love.
yeah, he even says, he who worships Krishna but doesn't worship Gauranga is a demon. But again, he's saying that out of erupting, volcanic eruptions coming. It's not because he's a Kanishta Dikari, that only my deity is the best. But it's just like, how can you not worship him? No. So I imagine, he's not saying he who is an atheist, he's who is even worshipping Krishna, but not Krishna's Gaur, Asura. So better you worship Gaur. Anyhow. So then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur continues. Param, let's go here. The word Parama, supreme, is used with Ananda, no, in conjunction with Ananda, to indicate that Krishna is the basis of Brahman. Again, what we said before, Brahman is generally connected with Anandam. So, but not Paramanandam. So if Krishna is Paramananda, means that Brahman is subordinate to Krishna. Brahmano hi pratistaham. Krishna says that in the Gita. I am the foundation of Brahman. The word Purnam, complete, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, indicates that Sri Krishna is distinct from the avatar forms, who are also Brahman Swarup, who are a form of the Absolute. All the avatars are also the Absolute, but Purnam is, Krishna is not avatar, is avatari, the source of all avatars. Also, Parama combined with Ananda means extraordinary sweetness by nature. Like the highest sweetness in various degrees of sweetness. Like when they give this description of sugar candy, rock candy, molasses. All these developments in Madhur. No? So the word Paramananda refers like the highest possible sweetness. German has for sure better words than English.
It was a recipe.
Okay, better you write it down. We are in cooking class with Krishna Chanda now. How to attain the highest possible distillation of sweetness. So Vishwanath said, this is good fortune and this is astonishing. Now, to taste such sweetness, the ultimate limit of sweetness, subjectively for Brahma in this case, this good fortune and this astonishing. Aho bhagyam, astonishing good fortune, astonishing good fortune. Oh. But there is something else which is astonishing, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, that this bliss is sanatanam, which means eternal. It's not just a thing that you taste, wow, incredible, disappear. He says someone may have a little amount of bliss, but that's not eternal. We said the other day, Dukhalayam Ashashvatam, Krishna says in the Gita, In this world, for those who are attached, there's no actual happiness. And if you feel that actually you are deriving ananda, second word, asasvatam, temporary. Here today, gone tomorrow. But here, sanatanam. So all these words are qualifying the other. No, it's paramanandam and it's sanatanam.
Never ending, always increasing.
Perfect. Like this. So these cowherds, Brahma is saying, have eternal bliss. No? In contrast with the temporary bliss of this world, their bliss is eternal. Why? Brahman here can mean, because this is the greatest. Remember, Brahman can mean the great or the greatest. So their bliss, according to Brahma's own opinion, that bliss is the greatest. I want that for me. And a few words more from Vishwanath, interesting. He said, Krishna is a friend, but not a temporary friend. Eternal friend. He said, Krishna is the eternal friend of Sridham and others. So from this eternal relationship, it is also understood that Sridham and others are also eternal. It's not that only Krishna is eternal, only friendship is eternal, because friendship requires two. So the one who is on the other side of the equation has to be eternal also. If not, Krishna cannot be said to have eternal friends. Exactly. That's not very generous towards him. So he has to have eternal friends. So in other words, when Brahma is here speaking about the eternality of Krishna's friendship, the friends of Krishna are also understood to be eternal. Do you understand my point? So Krishna is the eternal object of fraternal love, Sakyarasa, for example. So if he's the eternal object of there has to be an eternal subject who has that love, which corresponds with him being the eternal object of that. Because his existence as the eternal object depends on the existence of someone who has that love. You follow? If you take away that love, he cannot be the eternal object of the love because there's no love. In this case, we refer to the love of the friends. That's the point Krishna Das Kaviraj said when he said, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem, Sadhya Kavunai. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem is eternally existent and eternally perfect. And there has to be eternal personalities who personify that eternally existing love. So in other words, the point is, our goal for being perfect has to be eternal. If we are after a goal that is not eternally there already, there's a problem with that. It's temporary. It began at some point, it may end at some point, but these goals are always there. Nitya Siddha, eternal existence. So Brahma here is establishing this point. This is the case with Sakyarasa. No? That's always there. That's eternal. And of course, as we know, he is attracted to that. He received some scars for Sakyarasa during his initiation in the beginning of creation. That's an interesting point also. Brahma received Sakya Bhakti samskars in the beginning of during his initiation, but it took some time till he was able to reach the ideal that he received in a seed form in initiation. He received these samskars when he was born, and almost half of his life had to pass before he had the object of his love in front of him. So the lesson for us sadhakas is, you may receive initiation, but it may take some time till you reach your goal. But it's okay, no problem, as we already explained. Let's go to the conclusion of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. He said, therefore, the inhabitants of Raj give the topmost bliss to Krishna and they receive the topmost bliss in return. So the currency is only Paramananda. One is giving, receiving, but it's, so you never should think, oh, by giving all this, I won't receive anything. Silasya Maharaj once said, if you want to enter the spiritual world, you should understand you cannot enter there thinking about receiving anything. You
cannot
enter there thinking about receiving for you something. You have to go there thinking, I will go there to serve everyone. And nobody should serve me. Of course, everyone is thinking the same. So everyone is serving each other. Everyone receives what they receive. But this calculation shouldn't be in your mind when you are approaching there. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur concludes, since the Brajavasis give Krishna topmost bliss, and Krishna gives them topmost bliss, by receiving this Paramananda from Krishna, the Brajavasis are the objects of the highest rasa of astonishment. Oh, rasa sar chamatkar. No, the essence of rasa is astonishment. And again, our Acharya said it's because of astonishment that Brahma repeating again the same words. It's not that he committed some mistake grammatically. Why you are saying 2 times the same thing? And by repeating this, we have a few minutes, right? Eternity? Okay. So when by the expression of his astonishment means he's beginning to experience Priya Bhakti Rasa himself. No? Sakya Rasa, Priya Bhakti. So Brahma started to have a glimpse of Sakya Rasa. So he's, oh, Bhagam, oh, Bhagam. No? That's the only thing he can say. Sometimes this idea of chamatkar or astonishment, sometimes described as chitta vistar, which means the expansion of the heart. And sometimes the expansion of the heart is described as a supernatural delight, which comes by contemplating the beauty of Krishna, his form, qualities, leelas, Rupa Madhuri, Guna Madhuri, Venu Madhuri. By contemplating that, one feels the expansion of the chitta, expansion of the heart. And this grace, that's chamatkar. Oh. And again, Brahma is experiencing this now. After every verse, his chamatkar is increasing. So as we said in the beginning, before these prayers were the Brahma Vimohan Lila. So Brahma was Vimohan, was bewildered. Then he realized who Krishna was, and now he's bewildered in another sense. He's saying, aho. But from the perspective of Bhakti Rasa. A few ideas before concluding. Balabhacharya has something interesting to comment in this verse as well. He says in the previous verse, Brahma implied that by suckling the breast of the cows and mothers of Raj, Krishna rendered the first part of the Vedas ineffective. Which is the first part of the Vedas? All these yajnas and karma kanda. Remember that he said, all these yajnas offered to you do not cause us pleasure. So Balabhacharya says, the previous verse shows that the Vatsalya of the Brajavasis, first part of the Vedas is gone, discarded. And in this verse, Brahma suggests that also the latter part of the Vedas, the Upanishads, is rendered ineffective. Because again, the Upanishads are the section which speaks about Brahman in terms of abstract, absolute, nirgun. But here we find Purna Brahman or Para Brahman, not full with Leela, Prem, associates. So Upanishads, with all respect, that's why the Bhagavatam is called Shruti Sharamikam, which means the essence of the Shruti. And Shruti is another name for Upanishads. So the Bhagavatam is giving us the essence of the Upanishads. Remember, Upanishad, the word Upanishad means to sit close. Upanishad means sit close. Sit close means if I tell any of you, sit close, come here. The implication is, I'll tell you a secret. So Upanishad means this is an esoteric secret doctrine in comparison to the other sections of the Vedas. But Krishna in the Gita is called Gita Upanishad, the essence of the Upanishad. He describes what is the king of all secrets. He says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. The king of all secrets is bhakti, love. And the Gita, which says this, when the Gita concludes, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja, there the Bhagavatam starts. Dharma Praito Kaitavo. That's it. So if the Gita is way beyond the Upanishads, revealing love is the highest secrets, now the Bhagavatam reveals what's that highest secret about. 18,000 verses about that. And then where the Bhagavatam ends, Gaur Lila begins. Last verse of the Bhagavatam, Nama Sankirtanam Yasya, glorifying Sankirtan. So the end of the Bhagavatam puts us at the feet of Gaur. But that's another chapter, another section altogether. So Balabhacharya is making this point, right? So the Bhagavatam is giving us the essence of the Shruti, and the Bhagavatam is giving us the essence of Brahman, the essential notion who the Absolute is. Even though he doesn't seem Brahman, he seems an uncivilized cowherd boy. But he's the essence of the Absolute. And Srinivas Surya, another commentator, last commentary, he will say, what Brahma implies here the following. By Aho, again, he says, I'm unable to describe the glory of Krishna's friends. With such great respect for them, he glorifies them. He says, the repetition of Aho Bhagyam is therefore expressive of the highest regard. So Brahma is longing for that, but before, he's not asking here directly, make me a gopa. He's longing for that, but he's first worshipping his ideal. So in one sense we could say, and with this I would like to end with some interesting point, with or without your permission. Brahma is here expressing great respect. In one sense, great awe and reverence. Not for Krishna himself. He doesn't want the relation with Krishna and Aishwarya, but he's expressing reverence for the ideal he wants to attain. He's expressing reverence for those serving Krishna in intimate love, intimate friendship. In other words, hopefully you can follow me. Brahma is aspiring for intimate friendship with Krishna, and in the context of aspiring for that, he's expressing awe and reverence, not for Krishna, but for the path that takes one to intimacy with Krishna. He's experienced respect for the Raga Marg, Raga Nugaba. So I would like to conclude by mentioning this point with a very famous line composed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in this connection. Also, my Guru Maharaj will elaborate that line in one of the appendixes in his next book. So this line, Srila Sri Maharaj will say, this is the essence of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says, this is the essence of Bhaktisiddhanta Vani. His real existence, the real existence of Bhaktisiddhanta is there. So what's this line saying? Matala Haryana Bishaya Range Pujala Ragapata Gaurava Bhange. It's a very interesting line in Bengali. Srila Sri Maharaj liked so much this line that he made that engraved in his mat in Navadvip, in stone. So there's lots to say on this line, but a few words. This line was composed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati when the deities were moved from a rented house they had in Kolkata to the new Bhagavasar Gaudiya Math, which was a marble temple. And nowadays we are accustomed to marble temples, but at that time that was a huge thing, a marble temple. And in Kolkata, which was not useful for Gaudiyas to be in Kolkata. So he had all his monks and devotees collecting lots of money and throwing all this money for getting marble, if you will, and constructing this huge temple. So it seemed that his disciples were engaged like mundane people getting money and constructing something big. So it is said that when the deities were moved to this new temple, he ordered that this line will be sung while the deities are moved to that temple. So what's the meaning of these lines? Basically, he's saying the Hari Jans, the devotees of Hari, are worshipping Pujala Raga Pata Gaura Babangi Matala Haryana Vishayarangi. Krishna is the object of the affection, their passion of those Ragatmikas in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, Krishna is the object of the love of the Brajavasis. Pujala Raga Pata Gaura. But we who aspire to go there, puja, we worship them, Gaurava, with reverence. And how we worship them with reverence, we engage all our senses and money and functions in the worship of the Raga Marg. So, can I read one paragraph from my Guru Maharaj? And with this I conclude. This comes from his appendix to the forthcoming book. So basically, before reading, his idea is, we as sadhakas engage all what we have in the service of Mahaprabhu, Radha and Krishna, in the service of the Raga Marg. The more we engage in that worship, the more the reverence we have for the Raga Marg will disappear and we will enter into that domain. So my Guru Maharaj says like this to conclude. In this way, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur taught his followers to glorify the example of the Ragatmikas. Ragatmikas are eternal associates in Braj, in whose hands the Purna Brahma has become an intimate friend on equal terms. In doing so, Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples, in humility, felt themselves lacking qualification to directly participate in higher aspects of Raga Marga Bhajan. And instead, they appealed through their kirtan to the Ragatmikas for their grace, which resulted in an increased eligibility or adhikar to thread the raga mark themselves, to walk the raga mark themselves. He concludes saying, in other words, sadhakas giving proper respect to the highest ideals will in turn cause the ragatmikas to take notice of them. And to give them entrance into their realm. And in this way crossing over such reverence. So here we have the central verse from Brahma's prayers, today's verse, exemplifying such reverence for the Raga Marg. But with the ideal of Sakyarati in heart and mind. So this is the point. No? Brahma is feeling, I'm so falling, I'm so humble. I want this, but I'm not qualified for that. So I appreciate the good fortune of those who are there. I worship them. And by doing that, their attention will come on me. They will put their, oh, he's worshiping this love. So they will show their grace to me. And therefore that worship that I was doing, that creates worship, remember, means worshipper, worshipped, and worshipped. The more I do that properly, the attention of the ragatmikas will fall on me, and the gap will be bridged, and one will gain entrance into that object of longing. This is today's verse, basically, in which Brahma is presenting his longing. Yeah, basically, exactly. So I'll conclude here, and in tomorrow's verse, next verse, we have a few verses yet. And the next verse and the following two, that we will have the three of them here, Brahma will continue reflecting about the good fortune of the Sakyarasa Gopas. Interestingly, from verses 30 till 34, today's 32, the word bhagya is always present in all these verses. Bhagya means good fortune. We're in verse 32. In this one appears twice, because that's the special fortune he wants. But from verse 30 even till 34, bhagya, 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 bhagya. So it's a meditation by Brahma on the good fortune of those who have that attainment. So he will reflect not only on the good fortune of the Gopas, Brahma will reflect about his own good fortune. And especially, we will see in verse 35, that will be our last verse here, Brahma will reflect about Krishna's good fortune by having such friends in his life. Of course. No? But all of this will be in the context of Brahma re-establishing his own eternal desire for Sakyabhava. Okay. So we can conclude here if you like. And if there are there any urgent burning questions? I mean, we have done some in between, but if not, today in the evening we have Q&A, we can continue. So we'll conclude here. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Gaur Gadadhar ki jai, Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Rantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Brahma-stuti ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Praman. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Hari.